Have you ever been playing a game and run into a player who seemed to be playing an entirely different game than you? You know, when they just keep spamming and using long-range attacks while they sit back and relax. And the worst part is, it's not just in one game. We're talking Smash Bros, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and the list goes on. These spammers just don't want to get their hands dirty in close combat, so they keep their distance and spam away. But hey, can you blame them? Maybe they're just not skilled enough to fight you up close. But why do we despise this playstyle so much? Why do we hate it when players use moves and abilities that are technically legal and in the game for a reason, but just make us want to smash our controllers and punch our monitors? First, let's talk about projectile spamming. It's a tactic mainly used in fighting games, but can also be seen in battle royale games like Fortnite, Apex, and PUBG. This tactic involves repeatedly using medium to long range attacks to damage opponents while keeping a safe distance. This means that the player who's spamming can attack their opponent without putting themselves in harm's way. And this character type is so common across gaming, there's actually a name for it: zoners. Zoners are characters that seek to fight opponents as far away from themselves as possible, using projectiles and long pokes rather than combos and close range combat. It can be frustrating to play against a zoner because it can be challenging to get close enough to land a hit if they've actually mastered this tactic. While some people who are highly skilled use spam occasionally, it's mostly used by players who lack the skill to engage in close combat or just have a lack of brain cells. But there are some cases where it can actually be effective and even considered a smart technique. The main arguments for people who love to spam the same attacks over and over are the following. 1. If you can't beat a character that is only spamming, then you just aren't good at the game. 2. Spamming benefits long-range characters, and it's a part of their playstyle. If they were to engage in close combat, they'd actually be putting themselves at a disadvantage because they'd be using their characters suboptimally. 3. Spamming in certain scenarios is the smart thing to do, especially for certain fighting game modes like 2v2, and if your opponent is off the stage in a 1v1 in Smash Bros, like when using Pikachu's Thunder Jolt neutral B to edge guard. Also, in a battle royale mode, many times if you already have a high ground advantage or are already in the zone, it can be smart to spam other players trying to enter the next moving zone. 4. If a player is facing an opponent who is particularly good at close combat and has no real way of countering their opponent's attacks, projectile spamming can be a way to level the playing field. 5. Spamming is fun. Now, here's why projectile spamming sucks. 1. Spamming makes you predictable and leads to a lack of variety in your gameplay since you're not using your full moveset. 2. Spamming lets everyone know you're too scared to catch these hands. 3. Spamming doesn't require a lot of skill, so it's seen as a cheap win. 4. It can be seen as a lazy way to play the game since you're not getting up close to fight and relying solely on the same long-range attacks. 5. It can be frustrating to other players, especially if they feel like they have no way to counter the spamming. 6. It can create a boring and uninteresting viewing experience for spectators of competitive gaming events. 7. Nobody respects the guy who won by spamming PK Fire.
Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like.
Okay. PK Fire!
Say
Fire!
Say
Fire!
again. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say
Fire!
4 goddamn times.
Okay. PK Fire! PK Fire! PK Fire! PK Fire!
By spamming the same move, you lose the honor of winning in a traditional way, but let's be honest, nobody ever gives you the respect you deserve, even after whooping their ass and dunking them off the map. At the end of the day, whether or not projectile spamming is a good option depends on the situation and the player's skill level. While it can be seen as a cheap tactic, it can also be a smart and effective technique when used strategically. Now, let's talk about the history of cheese. No, not that cheese. Cheese or cheesing is a tactic that is not respected by the gaming community at large. It involves exploiting a game's mechanic to gain an advantage over other players or enemies. It's controversial because you're using apparent game design oversights to gain maximum advantage for minimum skill or effort. The term actually comes from people calling things cheesy to say that something is cheap or cringe. One of the earliest examples of players cheesing can be seen in Street Fighter 2, where players could use certain characters to infinite combo and stun their opponents while mashing the same buttons over and over again. Cheesing is usually seen as a valuable option on low level players, whereas the higher up the ranks you climb, the less cheesing there is, as the more skilled players have learned to counter it altogether. While this does mean that cheesing can usually be countered, it does mean that less knowledgeable players will be discouraged from playing if they don't feel that they are capable of overcoming the cheesy moves being used on them. For example, in Fortnite, exploiting into another player's box by spamming pickaxe swings and timing a jump when your ping is lower than the other player players is seen as cheesing. While this is pretty common, the issue with this is that if your enemy's ping is lower than yours, meaning the time taken for data to travel from their computer to a server's is faster than yours, then there's nothing you can really do to avoid them getting into your box, which makes you forced to go on the offensive if someone just won't stop trying to grief you when you're trying to heal. In Smash Bros, players who use a fast character like Sonic to hit, run away, repeat, and avoid combat until the match times out are cheesing. Instead of trying to win by taking down all 3 stocks, they try to rack up more damage by the time the match runs out. This tactic has even been used by some pros if we look at Sonic's, a pro Smash player. While attacking and dodging are usually seen as skillful, running to the opposite side of the map after doing a bit of chip damage can get annoying fast. They're playing cat and mouse while you're trying to get up close and box with them. But as we've seen with pro play, this is seen as a viable strategy in certain situations. Now, this next type of cheesing is controversial, but it's players who watch videos or read guides on how to get an overpowered spell or item that they can spam on the first playthrough to make the game easier for themselves. For example, in Elden Ring, there are tons of clips on Reddit of players using Comet Azure to take out bosses in one shot. While you do need to allocate a ton of points into your instat, along with certain in-game items like the Flask of Wondrous Physic and other items to make this truly effective, this is lame, because it makes some boss battles and usually formidable enemies a cakewalk by allowing you to essentially Kamehameha them into oblivion, which takes away from what these types of games are known for, which is skill, high difficulty, and challenge. It's like paying for a ride on a roller coaster and then taking out all the twists and turns, ups and downs, and loops because you're too much of a pussy to do the real thing. Sure, there's the exploration, RPG elements, and lore, but FromSoft games are known for pounding you over and over again until you can't feel your legs. I mean, controller. You're not learning the boss's attack patterns and intricacies, getting one step closer each time you fight them to victory. You're just blasting them so hard it's like you almost gotta feel bad about doing it to them. Sure, every once in a while you'll get a boss that you'll beat first try if you master the mechanics, but for the most part, each boss should be a milestone battle that shows you if you have a diverse enough playstyle and skill to adapt and eventually slay them. The problem with players who spam Comet Azure on the first playthrough is that it doesn't require much skill, just knowledge of spells and items in the game, which you most likely learn through watching a YouTube video or reading a short online post. By doing this, you're taking out the exploration aspect by using a guide to find the items needed instead of finding things organically in the game, and then you're taking out the difficulty by spamming that OP move all across the lands between. Obviously, I'm not saying you should never use overpowered spells, but I feel like this is something that you should explore on your second playthrough. And trust me, I get it, not everyone wants to or even has the time to play through the same game twice. So if you're someone who uses it as a trap card or when you have no other option, it's more forgivable. Ultimately, I think spamming and cheesing are both okay in moderation. I think the real issue comes when either one of them is used excessively or if the level that you are cheesing at is just completely derailing the game from what the developers had envisioned. But hey, that's just one guy's thought on cheesing and spamming. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and thanks for watching.